welcome back again, class. So, thank you for joining me. Now, today we are ready to dive fully into 11.5. Before we do so, let's take a really brief moment to recall what we're doing. So what we're doing is using cross multiplication. So what I mean by that is here, realizing we can take the 4 times x plus 1, and that's going to equal when we take 3 times x plus 2. So let's distribute both sides. So 4x plus 4 is going to equal 3x plus 6. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides because I want my variable on one side of the equation. So that's going to give me x on that side. Subtract the 4, I get x equals 2. All right, so that is solving linear cases. Now, today we're going to dive into slightly more difficult problems. Now, what I mean by slightly more difficult is let's see what happens when we set up the cross product. So here I have c times c minus 4. And I'm going to set that equal to 3 times 7, which I'm just going to say is 21. So this time when I distribute c squared minus 4c equals 21, uh-oh. This time, notice I'm getting a quadratic. All right, so now our previous chapter, our chapter 9, is coming back. We need to solve this quadratic. All right, so how do we solve the quadratic? We're going to move into step 2. Get one side equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract over that 21 and get a set equal to 0. Now, you know, there's several ways to solving quadratics. Now, in this section, they're going to be relatively nice, so my recommendation is to factor. You could use quadratic formula. However, I'd recommend it's probably easier just to factor these things. Quadratic trinomial. So let's see how this plays out. I'm going to get c and c. Negative 7 and positive 3 will multiply to negative 21 and add to negative 4. So now to solve it, c minus 7 equals 0, c plus 3 equals 0. So I'm getting a c of 7 and a c of negative 3. So that's going to be the main difference today, is now instead of getting linear things, you are getting quadratics. And so that all that means is an additional step of factoring and zero product property, and you'll be able to solve it just the same. So let's try another one. Again, cross product. So x times that x plus 8 is going to equal 5 times negative 3. So it's going to equal negative 15. Distribute to get x squared plus 8x. Now again, notice I've got a quadratic, so that means now I need to get it set equal to 0. I'm going to add 15 to both sides so I can get this set equal to 0. Now that I've done that, I've got a quadratic trinomial. So I'm going to factor it. We get x and x. Two things that multiply to 15 and add to 8. I'm going to get positive 3 and positive 5. Use the zero product property at this point. So we're going to get x is negative 3, x is negative 5. And those are going to be our two solutions here. All right, flip the page, please. And we're going to work on our next example. So here again, set up our cross product. So x times x minus 6 is going to equal 2x. Distribute that. So x squared minus 6x equals 2x. Now again, I can't have things on both sides, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So that's what I get when I do that. Again, subtracting the 2x from both sides of my equation. And now I don't have a cubic trinomial or a quadratic trinomial. I've got a quadratic. However, my variable is in both terms. So remember, when this is the case, when your variable ends up being in both terms, remember all you have to do is pull that variable out. Okay? So I'm going to factor out my variable from both sides, or not from both sides, from both terms. Because now when I go to set the two things that are multiplied equal to 0, that x is 0, the x minus 8 is also 0. So I get my two solutions of x being 0 and x being 8. All right, and now moving on to our last example, our final example of the day. Again, always set up your cross product. So x times 2x minus 11 equals -5. Distribute to get 2x squared minus 11x equals -5. We need to get a set equal to 0, so we need to add that 5 over. So I get 2x squared minus 11x plus 5, again, because I'm moving the 5 over. Now, if I'm going to factor this quadratic trinomial, so I set this up, I need 2x and x. Now, I need to multiply to 5 and then combine to -11. So to combine to a negative, it's going to take two negative numbers. And again, this factoring is like a puzzle. So in order to solve this, again, fit the puzzle together, but I'm going to tell you that it is -1 and -5. Next, zero product property says set both pieces equal to 0. So over here you have to add 1 and divide by 2. Over here you just have to add the 5. But then you've got your two solutions, your two answers. All right, so once again, thank you so much for joining me for this notes video. Make sure you have everything written down, and so then in class we can do our practice together.